The silent sky. The night sky above Earth looked calm, almost too calm, as if nothing strange was about to happen. Millions of people slept in their homes. Children dreamed without fear, and cities glowed with their usual lights. Yet, far beyond, the blue atmosphere, something terrible had already begun. A silent fleet of alien warships drifted on the edge of the solar system. Their commanders had studied Earth for years, watching humanity's progress, measuring their weapons, and laughing at their weaknesses. To them, Earth was nothing but a small world, fragile, easy to break. Tonight, they were ready to prove it. The alien leader gave one single command, and 10 massive missiles were launched into the black void. Each one was larger than a skyscraper, moving silently like predators. They carried destruction strong enough to erase entire cities. No sound, no warning, only death racing toward Earth. On the ground, humans noticed first through radar screens. In a dark control room buried under a mountain, alarms began to scream. Red lights flashed across the panels as technicians stared in disbelief. The computers confirmed it. 10 unidentified objects had entered the system, moving fast, locked. On Earth. Missiles. One voice whispered. His hands shook as he pointed at the screen. They're targeting us. The room fell silent. For a second, no one breathed. Then the commander shouted orders. Messages were sent to world leaders. Sirens began to wail across military bases, and the sleeping world was about to wake into nightmare. In the cities, people heard the emergency alerts on their phones and televisions. Some ran into the streets in confusion, some prayed, and some refused to believe it was real. But the truth came quickly. Missiles were falling toward Earth. Above the clouds, telescopes caught the first images. 10 glowing trails cut across the darkness of space, each growing brighter as they rushed closer. The world stared in horror as news screens broadcasted live. Anchors could barely speak. Their voices cracked as they explained that humanity might only have minutes left. On the alien ship, the invaders watched with cold smiles. They expected panic, surrender, and despair. To them, Earth was nothing but prey, loud, weak, and foolish prey. But Earth was not quiet. In hidden bunkers, defense systems activated. The old satellites once thought useless came alive with new codes. Secret weapons, prepared in silence for decades, were unlocked. Humanity had been waiting, perhaps, not for this exact moment, but for something like it. Still, no one could be sure if it was enough. Children clung to their parents. Soldiers checked their rifles, though they knew rifles could not stop missiles from space. Politicians shouted over one another, demanding action, while generals stood, frozen, eyes fixed on the countdown clocks. Impact in 15 minutes, when the computer warned. Every heartbeat felt heavier. The sky above Earth still looked peaceful, filled with stars, but the people now knew death was racing through that very same sky. In one small village, a boy looked up, holding his telescope. He saw the streaks of fire moving closer. His father pulled him inside, but the boy whispered, "They are coming. Why are they coming for us?" No one had an answer. Back in orbit, the alien missiles adjusted their course. The world's best defenses tried to intercept, sending desperate rockets into the night. A few connected glowing explosions lighting up the blackness, but it was not enough. Too many missiles still streaked forward. The people of Earth watched the live feeds as the numbers fell lower. 10, 9, 8. Cities were marked on maps as targets. New York, Beijing, Moscow, London, Tokyo. Humanity braced for the fire. The alien commander laughed, believing victory was already his. To him, 10 missiles meant the end of Earth's pride. Yet he did not know that something was waiting, something humans had hidden even from themselves. For now, though, the world could only watch. Fear grew heavy in every heart. The silent sky, once a place of peace and dreams, had turned into the stage of terror, and when the first missile entered Earth's atmosphere, lighting up the heavens like a burning star, billions of eyes turned upward. Mothers held their children. Soldiers stood ready, though they knew it was hopeless, and leaders whispered final prayers. The silent sky was no longer silent. It was about to roar with fire. The first strike. The world held its breath as the first of the alien missiles broke through the upper atmosphere. It came like a second sun blazing across the sky. For a moment, people thought it was a meteor. But no meteor carried such speed. No meteor adjusted its path with such precision. This was no accident of nature. This was war. Sirens screamed in every major city. Military jets scrambled into the sky, their engines roaring as they rushed toward impossible targets. The missiles were faster, deadlier, and guided by alien technology. Still, the humans tried. Rockets fired upward, streaks of white smoke cutting across the dark horizon. Explosions lit the heavens, but only 2 of the 10 were stopped. 8 missiles remained. 8 burning stars, each promising death. In New York, millions of people ran through the streets. Parents dragged their children into subway tunnels, while others packed into cars that would never move fast enough. Traffic froze. Fear ruled the air. In Tokyo, temples echoed with desperate prayers. In London, church bells rang without order, not for celebration but as warnings. Everywhere, eyes looked upward. Every second stretched into eternity. The first missile struck. It fell near the coast, and for a heartbeat, the world was blinded by light. A fireball rose taller than any mountain. The ground shook as if the planet itself cried in pain. Houses were torn apart, windows shattered hundreds of miles away. A shockwave rolled through the city, throwing cars like toys. People screamed. Some fell to their knees believing it was the end of days. The second missile landed in a desert. The blast turned sand into glass, a shining plain of death. A whole region disappeared in seconds, leaving nothing but silence and smoke. The aliens watched from orbit, their screens filled with human terror. Their commanders smiled with satisfaction. So weak, one of them hissed. So fragile. Soon they will kneel. But on Earth, something else stirred. In an underground base, General Marcus slammed his fist on the table. His face was pale, but his eyes burned with fury. "Enough waiting," he said. "Activate the Black Protocol." The room went silent. The Black Protocol was humanity's last defense, a secret plan whispered only in shadows. For years, governments had argued about building weapons strong enough to face invaders. Most had laughed at the idea, but some had prepared. Now their work would awaken. High in orbit, hidden satellites unfolded. Their panels glowed as they powered ancient codes. Deep under the oceans, massive doors began to slide open, releasing machines no one had ever seen. In forgotten asteroid mines. Something stirred. Human dreadnoughts. Silent guardians waiting for the right time. That time had come, yet the missiles were still falling. The third one struck near Moscow. The explosion swallowed entire districts, leaving only blackened ruins. Survivors stumbled through the ash, coughing, blinded, crying for their loved ones. Soldiers rushed into the chaos, not knowing how to fight an enemy in the sky. The fourth missile hit outside Beijing. The blast wave crushed steel buildings as if they were made of paper. Fires spread across the city, painting the night in red. The people's screams mixed with the roar of flames. The world wept. The world raged. Still, the missiles came. The fifth and sixth were intercepted at the last second, destroyed by human rockets guided with desperate hope. People cheered, but their cheers turned to sobs as the seventh missile struck London. A great tower crumbled. The city of history and pride was scarred forever. 2 missiles remained. In the control room, General Marcus stared at the screen. Sweat rolled down his forehead, but he did not blink. "Hold the line," he whispered, though no one understood if he was speaking to his soldiers or to the Earth itself. The 8th missile targeted Tokyo. Anti-missile defenses fought like cornered wolves. Dozens of rockets flew, each a spark of resistance. Against all odds, the missile exploded in the air, raining fire but sparing the heart of the city. Survivors cried tears of relief. The 9th missile, however, was not stopped. It fell on the Middle East, and in seconds entire villages were gone. Dust and fire consumed the horizon. Now only one remained. All around the world, people prayed, screamed, or simply sat in silence, waiting for the final strike. In homes, in bunkers, in open fields, everyone looked at the sky, their hearts racing. The last missile was heading for Washington, the capital of human power. The alien commander leaned forward, his cold eyes fixed on the screen. "Finish it," he whispered. But as the missile neared the city, something unexpected happened. A beam of light, brighter than the sun, lanced upward from the ground. It was not alien, it was human. A hidden weapon never revealed fired for the first time. The missile was caught midair, ripped apart by raw energy, and exploded before it could touch the earth. The people in Washington cheered. Across the world, screens flashed with the image of hope. For the first time that night, the aliens frowned. They had hurt Earth, but they had not broken it. And somewhere deep in the void, humanity's retribution was already preparing to rise. Humanity's hidden weapon, the smoke of destruction, still rose from burning cities. The world mourned, but the world also waited. Something had changed in that final moment when the last missile was destroyed. People had seen a light, not from the aliens, but from Earth itself. For the first time in history, the planet felt united, not in fear but in anger. In an underground base, deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Marcus stood in the command chamber. His uniform was dusty, his eyes bloodshot, but his voice carried the weight of steel. "The world bleeds tonight," he said, looking at the tired faces of his officers. "But we are not broken. Now we answer." He turned to a console sealed with 3 locks. Keys were brought by 3 different officers, each trembling as they slid them into place. Together they twisted, and the console hummed alive. A screen lit up with a single phrase: "Black Protocol, armed." The room shook as ancient engines deep beneath the earth began to wake. Somewhere under the Pacific Ocean, massive steel doors opened like the jaws of a beast. From the dark water rose the shape of a ship so large that waves crashed for miles around. It was a dreadnought, the USS Titan, a warship hidden for decades. It was not the only one. In Antarctica, buried under ice, drills cut open a frozen vault. The ground cracked, and from it rose another monster, an armored colossus with cannons the size of buildings. The Artemis joined the fleet, her guns warming for the first time. In asteroid fields drifting near Mars, shadows moved. What many believed were abandoned mines lit up with engines. Ships emerged, their hulls scarred from long construction, but their weapons gleaming. These were the Ghost Fleet, designed in silence, built in secret, waiting for a night just like this one. Back on Earth, ordinary people did not know the truth. They believed Earth had little defense, that their governments were powerless. But whispers spread quickly, rumors of hidden ships, hidden weapons, hidden strength. Hope returned to their eyes, like a spark fighting the darkness. In orbit, the alien commanders watched their screens. They expected humanity to beg for peace or surrender. Instead, they saw movement. Strange energy signatures pulsed from the oceans, from the poles, even from space itself. The alien leader frowned, his smile gone. "What is this?" he demanded. Scientist beside him trembled. It looks like they were hiding weapons, my lord. Weapons strong enough to match our own." The alien commander slammed his clawed hand on the console. "Impossible, they are primitives." But the images did not lie. Human warships were rising. On board the Titan, Captain Reynolds stood at the bridge. He was an older man, his face lined, with years of waiting for a battle no one believed would ever come. Around him, young officers looked both terrified and eager. "Sir," one whispered. "Orders from command. We are to launch." Reynolds nodded slowly, his hand tightening on the railing. "Then let the galaxy see us." Engines roared. The Titan lifted, a mountain of steel breaking free from the ocean. Water cascaded down its sides as it ascended into the sky. People on distant shores saw it rise, jaws dropping in awe. Some cried, some cheered, and some simply whispered, "We are not done." One by one, the hidden dreadnoughts appeared. They were not sleek like alien ships. They were raw, heavy, brutal machines of war. But they carried something the aliens did not: human rage, human defiance, and human ingenuity. The first transmission was sent across the stars. It was not a plea, not a cry for mercy. It was a message of fire. "This is Earth Command," Marcus's voice thundered through every frequency. "You struck our homes. You killed our children. Now we come for you." The words echoed in every city, every bunker, every surviving home. People lifted their heads, fists clenched. The fear that had gripped them was replaced by something stronger: fury. On the alien flagship, silence fell. The commander's eyes narrowed as he saw human dreadnoughts forming into a fleet. "They mean to fight us," he whispered. One of his lieutenants hissed nervously. "And if they win," the commander snarled, "then we burn them all, every last one." But inside, doubt began to grow. For the first time, the predators felt like prey. High above Earth, the stars now carried a new light. Engines burned as human ships aligned, weapons powered, shields raised. The Titan led the fleet, its cannons glowing like the eyes of a waking giant. The world watched from below. The galaxy listened in silence. And in that moment, the sky no longer belonged to the aliens. It belonged to humanity. And humanity was ready to strike back. The war had truly begun. The counterattack, the fleet of human dreadnoughts cut through the darkness like a rising storm. Their engines glowed with blue fire. Their cannons hummed with energy never before unleashed. The oceans behind them calmed. The mountains stood still and the cities below held their breath. For the first time in history, the people of Earth looked up and saw not helplessness, but power. On the bridge of the USS Titan, Captain Reynolds tightened his grip on the railing. His voice was steady, though his crew could feel the weight in it. "Mark the coordinates of the alien fleet," he ordered. "We strike first." Around him, officers worked with trembling hands, not from fear, but from anticipation. They had waited their whole lives to prove that humanity was more than prey. Now the time had come. In orbit, the alien commander watched with sharp eyes. His smile had returned, but it was thinner now, forced. "Let them rise," he hissed. "We will crush their toys like insects." He raised a clawed hand and signaled his fleet. Hundreds of alien warships shifted, forming a wall of steel and plasma across the stars. Their weapons gleamed, and their gay engines roared, then silence. For one heartbeat, the galaxy itself seemed to wait. Stars flickered. The void grew still. Two forces, one ancient and one newborn, stared at each other across the abyss. And then humanity fired. The Titan unleashed its first railgun shot. The weapon was a monster, a cannon the size of a building. It screamed as it fired, releasing a rod of tungsten at unimaginable speed. The projectile tore through space faster than sound, faster than thought. It ripped into the alien front line, shredding through 3 ships before they even knew they were hit. "Direct hit," shouted an officer. The crew cheered, their voices raw with triumph. But there was no time to celebrate. The aliens struck back. Beams of green energy carved through the void. Plasma cannons thundered, lighting the dark with fire. Human shields flared, flickered, but held. The fleet shuddered as the first hits landed. The crew clenched their teeth, gripping their stations. "Return fire!" Reynolds roared, and the sky burned. Every dreadnought in the human fleet opened fire. Missiles streaked forward like shooting stars, railguns thundered, and hidden energy. Cannons erupted with blinding light. Alien ships exploded one after another, their wreckage spinning across the battlefield. But humanity paid in blood. The Artemis, the great beast from the Antarctic, was caught in a barrage of plasma fire. Its shields cracked. Its hull melted. A scream echoed through the comms as the ship broke apart, vanishing in a ball of fire. The crew of the Titan watched the explosion in silence, their faces pale. Yet Captain Reynolds only lowered his head. "They will not die for nothing. Push forward." And forward they went. In the chaos, the Ghost Fleet emerged from the asteroid belt. They struck like assassins, their smaller ships darting between alien giants. They tore open weak points, planted charges, and vanished into the shadows of space. Explosions followed them like a trail of vengeance. The alien commander growled, in frustration. "They fight like animals," he spat. His claws dug into the armrest of his throne. "Crush them, erase them from the stars." But his words could not change the truth. For every human ship destroyed, 3 alien ships fell. For every blast that scarred Earth's steel, another carved through alien flesh. Humanity was no longer running. Humanity was attacking. Across Earth, people watched the live feeds. They saw their warships glowing in the black, their cannons spitting fire. They saw alien titans burning. They saw that humanity was not powerless. Cheers rose in ruined cities. Fists lifted into the smoke. Children shouted the names of ships they had never known existed. In Washington, General Marcus stood tall before the cameras. His voice boomed across the airwaves. "To the people of Earth, do not bow, do not fear. Tonight, the hunters become the hunted." Back in orbit, Captain Reynolds narrowed his eyes. His fleet was battered but alive. Alien wreckage drifted across the void, burning like dying stars. And yet, in the distance, more alien ships waited. Hundreds, thousands. This was not over. He turned to his crew. "Prepare the Nova cannons." A hush fell over the bridge. The Nova cannons were the deadliest weapons ever built by human hands. So powerful they had never been tested in real combat. Now they would decide the fate of Earth. "Yes, sir," the officers whispered. Their hands moved quickly, loading the weapons, powering the engines, locking on the enemy. The alien commander saw the charging glow on human ships. His eyes widened. For the first time, true fear crossed his face. "What are they doing?" he muttered. The answer came as a beam of pure white light erupted from the Titan. It tore across the void, cutting through shields, armor, and flesh. Alien ships disintegrated one by one until the stars were filled with nothing but fire. The counterattack had begun, and the galaxy would never forget it. The enemy trembles. The stars glowed with fire. Broken alien ships drifted silently across the void, their flames dying like candles in the night. Human dreadnoughts stood firm among the wreckage, their hulls scarred, their shields trembling, but their spirits unbroken. On the USS Titan, Captain Reynolds stood at the center of the bridge, his eyes locked on the battlefield. His voice was calm, but his crew could feel the storm inside him. "Status report," he ordered. "Shields at 40%, an officer replied quickly. "Ammunition low. Casualties confirmed on the Ghost Fleet, but sir, the enemy is retreating." The word sent a strange silence through the room. Retreat? Aliens who had marched toward Earth with arrogance, who had fired 10 missiles without hesitation, were pulling back. For the first time, humanity had forced them to bleed. On the alien flagship, chaos ruled. Commanders shouted over each other, their voices filled with panic. Holoscreens showed burning fleets, shattered squadrons, and human dreadnoughts advancing with relentless fury. "They were not supposed to have this power," one alien cried, his scaled hands trembling. "They are primitives, animals." Another hissed, but his voice cracked, betraying fear. The alien commander sat on his throne, his claws digging into the armrest. His eyes burned, but beneath the fire was doubt. He had promised victory. He had promised the humans would kneel. Now his fleet screamed for orders. "Do we strike again?" one officer asked, his body shaking. Or do we call for retreat?" another whispered. The room froze. That word, retreat, had never been spoken in their empire's long history. They had crushed countless species, burned countless worlds. But tonight, in the black sky above Earth, they had met something different, something that did not bow. The commander rose slowly, his shadow stretching across the chamber. "We are the hunters," he growled. "We do not retreat. Double the firepower. Burn their fleet from the stars." But even as he spoke, a new voice entered the chamber. It was an elder, one of the ancient advisors of their race. His scales were pale with age, his eyes heavy with knowledge. "You do not see it?" the elder said softly. "These humans are not like the others. They fight with rage, they fight with memory. Every death gives them strength. Every wound makes them more dangerous. If we continue, we may lose more than a battle. We may lose everything." The chamber grew colder. No one moved. No one dared to breathe. Back in human space, the Ghost Fleet regrouped, their smaller ships weaving between dreadnoughts. Survivors reported heavy damage, but their voices carried pride. They had struck the enemy. They had made them bleed. In cities across Earth, survivors gathered around screens. They saw alien wreckage drifting in the sky. They saw their warships burning, but unbroken. They saw humanity fighting back. Children in ruined streets lifted their fists. Mothers who had lost everything whispered to the sky, "Make them pay." The world trembled not in fear but in anger. On the Titan, Captain Reynolds leaned forward. His eyes narrowed as he studied the alien formation. "They're hesitating," he said. "They're afraid." "Sir?" He nodded. "Look at their lines. They're breaking formation. Their captains don't know what to do." A murmur spread across the bridge. Fear, alien fear, was a sight no human had ever seen. Reynolds clenched his fist. "Then we press harder. If they tremble, we strike until they fall." "Orders, Captain?" His voice rang like steel. "Advance." Engines roared as human dreadnoughts pushed forward. Railguns boomed. Nova cannons hummed. Alien ships scattered, their once proud formation crumbling into chaos. On the alien flagship, the commander watched in fury. "Hold the line," he screamed. But his captains no longer obeyed with the same loyalty. Fear had entered their hearts. One squadron broke away, engines flaring as they fled into the darkness. Another hesitated, their weapons silent. "Cowards," the commander roared. But he could not stop the truth. His army trembled. The elder turned his head toward him. "You unleashed fire on Earth, but now you see, the fire belongs to them." For a moment, the commander said nothing. His claws shook. His chest heaved with rage and shame. Meanwhile, on Earth, people cheered as alien ships fell back. The voices of billions rose into the night, echoing with one word: humanity. For the first time, the galaxy would hear it. But in the silence, between battles, Reynolds whispered to himself, "This isn't the end. They'll come again, stronger, angrier, but so will we." And in the distance, deep in alien space, more fleets were already preparing. The enemy trembled tonight. But tomorrow, the storm would grow even darker. Humanity's wrath. The alien fleet had pulled back, their once perfect lines broken. Wreckage floated in the void, glowing like dying stars. But on the bridges of human dreadnoughts, no one celebrated. They knew this was not the end. It was only the beginning. On the USS Titan, Captain Reynolds stood tall, his uniform torn from the shaking battles earlier, his voice steady as steel. "We have them on the run," he said. "But running enemies return. We cannot let them. We strike harder, faster, until they know Earth is not prey." His officers looked at him with wide eyes. They could feel the weight of his words. For centuries, humanity had been the hunted, fearing what might come from the stars. Tonight, that ended. Tonight, humanity would become the hunter. "Prepare the Nova cannons," Reynolds ordered. Engines flared, massive batteries charged with light brighter than the sun. Across the fleet, weapons hummed, vibrating the very hulls of ships. It was not just power. It was fury given form. Humanity's wrath, ready to be unleashed. In alien space, reinforcements arrived. Hundreds of ships warped in, engines screaming, weapons glowing. The alien commander stood on his bridge, his pride wounded, but not gone. "Destroy them," he roared. "I want Earth burned to ash." But his voice trembled, even if he tried to hide it. The fleets clashed once more. The sky exploded in fire. Human railguns thundered. sending spears of steel through alien armor. Nova cannons cut the blackness with white beams, tearing entire squadrons into dust. Alien plasma burned back, scorching human shields, ripping through hulls. Ships on both sides screamed, engines bursting, crews crying out. The Artemis II, sister ship of the fallen dreadnought, pushed into the heart of the enemy formation. Surrounded, it fired every missile it carried. The sky filled with streaks of light, explosions tearing through the alien wall. The ship's hull cracked. Fire erupted across its decks, but it did not stop. Its last act was to ram an alien flagship, the collision a sun-bright explosion that shook both fleets. On Earth, the world watched. In broken cities, survivors cheered the sacrifice. Children cried but held their heads high. Soldiers whispered the name Artemis like a prayer. Humanity's wrath was not only in weapons, it was in courage and sacrifice, in defiance. On the Titan, Reynolds gritted his teeth. "They think we fear death," he muttered. "But death only makes us stronger." His fleet surged forward. The Ghost Fleet struck from the shadows, cutting engines, appearing behind enemy lines, planting bombs. Alien warships burst into flames, their screams echoing through the void. The alien commander snarled, his pride breaking into desperation. "This is impossible," he shouted. "No species fights like this." The elder beside him whispered, "No species suffers like humans. Their pain is their power. You cannot break them. You only feed their fire." For a moment, the commander could not speak. His throat was dry, his claws shaking. Around him, his officers no longer shouted victory. They whispered fear. Back in human command, General Marcus watched the battle feeds. His face was stone, his eyes wet. Every red dot on the screen meant a lost ship, a lost crew, but every alien wreck meant vengeance. He leaned close to the microphone. "To the fleet," he said, "show them the fury of Earth." The order reached Reynolds, his eyes burned as he raised his hand. "All ships," he commanded, "focus fire, leave none standing." The fleet roared. Nova cannons fired in unison. Beams of white fire cut across the stars, slicing through alien formations. Railguns hammered, missiles streaked like storms of meteors. One by one, alien ships erupted into balls of flame. The alien fleet began to collapse. Captains abandoned formation, ships fled in panic. Their commander screamed, demanding order, but his words were drowned by the explosions of his dying fleet. For the first time in their long reign across the stars, the aliens felt what countless others had felt before them: fear of extinction. On the Titan, silence fell for a moment as the last alien flagship cracked apart, fire spilling from its core. Reynolds lowered his hand. "Status?" he asked quietly. "Alien fleet. Destroyed, sir," came the reply. The officer's voice shook with disbelief. "The survivors are fleeing." A murmur spread across the bridge. Some whispered cheers, some wiped their tears. They had done it. Humanity had not only survived, humanity had punished. Reynolds looked out the viewport at the burning wreckage. His jaw tightened. "Let them run," he said coldly. "Let them carry the story. The galaxy must know. Earth does not forgive." And across the stars, the message spread, to worlds that had laughed at humans, to empires that had ignored them, to species that had called them weak. The truth echoed. Humanity had roared. Humanity had struck back. Humanity's wrath had been unleashed. The galaxy trembled, and this was only the beginning. The lesson of retribution. The battlefield was silent now. The stars that once burned with fire and death grew calm again, littered with drifting wreckage. Alien ships, once proud and mighty, now floated as broken husks. Some smoldered with dying flames. Others spun endlessly in the void. The human fleet held formation, scarred but alive. Hulls were torn, shields cracked, engines damaged, but their spirits stood unbroken. Humanity had not just survived an invasion. Humanity had answered it with fire. On the USS Titan, Captain Reynolds stood at the command deck staring out the viewport. The silence after battle felt heavier than the noise of war. His crew waited for his words, knowing the galaxy itself would soon listen. "Open a channel," he said at last. The signal spread across the stars, reaching fleeing alien ships, neutral, observers, and countless hidden worlds. Billions who had watched the invasion in secret now leaned closer to their screens. Reynolds' voice came, calm but sharp as a blade. "To those who fired 10 missiles at Earth," he said, "know this: we will never forgive and we will never forget." The galaxy listened. "You believed us weak. You believed us prey. But when you struck our children, you forged something stronger than fear. You forged our wrath. Tonight your fleets burn because of it. If you ever return, if you ever touch Earth again, we will not stop until your stars go dark." The words carried through space like thunder. For the first time, humanity spoke not as victims but as predators. On the alien flagship, the only surviving command ship, the alien commander slumped in his throne. His body trembled, his pride shattered. Around him, his officers sat in silence, their faces pale. No one dared to argue, no one dared to speak. The message from Earth echoed in their ears like a curse. The elder turned to him. His ancient eyes glowed with grim knowledge. "You thought them simple, but you did not see the truth. They are not the weakest race in the galaxy. They are the most dangerous, for they are the ones who rise when struck down." The commander lowered his head, his claws shaking. He had wanted glory, conquest, and triumph. Instead, he had brought his people shame. Back on Earth, survivors emerged from bunkers and ruins. They looked up at the night sky and saw something new. Not fear, not hopelessness, but pride. They whispered the names of ships: Titan, Artemis, Ghost Fleet. They honored the fallen, but they also celebrated the living. Humanity had stood together, and in that unity, they had found strength no alien could measure. In the cities, people rebuilt with determination. Soldiers carried their wounded with care, promising their sacrifices would never be forgotten. Children drew pictures of the massive dreadnoughts rising from the oceans, their eyes shining with dreams of the stars. The lesson of retribution spread beyond Earth. Messages traveled to colonies on Mars, to mining stations near Jupiter, to listening posts on the edge of the solar system. Every human heart burned with the same fire, and beyond humanity's borders, whispers spread among other species. Small civilizations that had once feared the alien empire now dared to hope. "If humans can resist," they said, "maybe we can too." In hidden halls of distant worlds, leaders who had mocked Earth now reconsidered. They replayed the images of human dreadnoughts tearing alien warships apart. They listened to Reynolds' warning again and again. For the galaxy, Earth was no longer a forgotten world. It was a storm. On the Titan, Reynolds finally turned away from the stars. His crew waited for orders, their eyes still glowing with battle fire. "Set course for home," he said. "Our people need us. The galaxy can wait. Tonight, Earth breathes again." The engines hummed. One by one, the human ships turned toward their world, carrying survivors, carrying scars, carrying victory. But as the fleet moved, Reynolds whispered softly to himself, words only he could hear. "This was only the first lesson. If they come, again they will learn the last." And in that whisper was a promise, not just of defense, but of dominance. The aliens had unleashed humanity's retribution, and now the galaxy would live forever in its shadow.